Hello and welcome to Mind Shifters Radio. I'm Tim Hayes. I'm your host for the first hour. And today is Monday, October 13th, 2025. As always, we're grateful to everyone who's joining us here today, whether you're listening live or through the archives. As we spend another couple of hours teaching and supporting people in using some of the most powerful, effective, efficient, and accessible tools I've ever encountered. These tools are available absolutely free through the tireless efforts of Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce on the website at whyagain.org. If you go to that website and click on the two words that say Start Here in the upper left-hand corner, take you to a page where you can download and read Chapter 24 of Dr. Michael Ryce's book. His book is titled, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And that chapter of the book contains a narrative description and explanation of the primary tool in this work. That tool is called the Reality Management Worksheet, sometimes called the Reality Management Wake-Up Sheet. And it's a tool I've been using to great effect for over 21 years now to improve the quality of my life and most of my relationships, and to turn any negative emotional experience I have into part of the infallible guidance system that each and every one of us has been given. You can actually download the actual worksheet process itself. It's a simple PDF file. Click the link, download it, print it off, copy it as often as you'd like, and use it over and over again absolutely free. You can also download a whole host of audio files of shows just like this one from that same web page where people have been stepped through the worksheet process, and if you choose to listen to them even repeatedly, they can serve as a powerful tutorial for you to help you get maximum benefit from these tools in the shortest amount of time possible. You can also go to your app store and type in the three words HeartLand Aramaic Forgiveness, and if you choose to do that, before you're done typing the word forgiveness, you'll see the glowing heart icon. If you tap on it, it will let you download a completely free and private app that contains the Reality Management Worksheet. It contains an abbreviated version of that worksheet process, and it contains a copy of the Dragon Klingon game, which is a wonderful way to introduce these tools to even younger audiences. We hope people do all of that soon and often, primarily because it tends to improve the quality of people's lives the more they actively apply these tools in their lives, and secondarily because it tends to prompt comments, questions, answers, and testimonials. If you have any of those to share with us, we'd greatly appreciate you doing so. You can email me at tjh@mindshifters-academy.org, or you can email Jeanie at jeanie@whyagain.org. That's whyagain.org. Or you can join us live. You can go to zoom.us and enter the meeting ID number for this first hour, which is 853-2357-4173. That's the meeting ID for the first hour. It's 853-2357-4173. And once you're there, you can either open up a browser window and enter that, or you can call one of the many numbers they offer, and you'll be able to listen in, or you can type in *6 to toggle the mute on and off if you're on the phone call. And we greatly appreciate when people do that because it makes it so much easier for us to live into our intention with this work. We have the intention to be of service, and that's so much easier to do when we get feedback from people like you. So, it's a Monday, and we have plenty of time for conversations.
I want to have one.
All right.
Hi, Dr. Tim.
Hello, Susan Bingham.
Hey, Michael Ryce, and this is his topic, and I want your take on it, if you have a take. Long ago, he talked about the Lord's Prayer being a way of us setting a trap for God. And then, I had forgotten this, but years ago he gave a talk, which I just re-listened to. He sent it to me The talk on the Lord's Prayer includes a talk about the antenna that is somehow in the construction of our skull, or maybe our whole skeleton, and the effectiveness of an unbent antenna as opposed to one that's all bent out of shape and can't receive a signal. And now I asked him about, this business of having a hip replacement, which I don't like the idea of doing. And he thinks that I can find my way to a healing by resetting my antenna. He suggested I work with Patrick McGann, something to do with how to hold your body, a kind of posture, relaxed posture state that gets the signal moving right. And if the signal is right, the problem will go away. And he's thinking about John Sarno and how really physical issues have an emotional component. And you and I were talking about that last week, and you're darn right. I think that's true. But I wondered if you could comment anywhere along the line with your understanding about setting a trap for God or setting up the antenna.
Related to your hip?
Or any physical thing. Yeah, sure.
Well, I thought you were going to say that you ran into something in this older, the Lord's Prayer talk that Michael did that somehow contradicts something he's talking about today. Is that what you had intended to say?
No, it's actually,
Okay.
he was talking about it a long time ago and somehow has come around to it with another new download or more enthusiasm than ever. And that included his finding out more about his work with Patrick McGann, is what I'm thinking I understand. I may not even
Well,
understand it right.
I think what's happened, because I was listening to, the shows where Patrick was on Michael's show and they were talking, and, Patrick stepped the audience through an exercise, etc. That my take on what's happened, as I've listened to Michael talk about how he's, breathing and meditating 2 or 3 hours a day now, and et cetera, et cetera. And he's getting all of these downloads and upgrades, and he's learning more.
Yeah.
That what's happened is Michael sees a new level at which the alignment that he's always felt he's had with Patrick's work has gotten expanded and gotten stronger. I think that's what's happened. Right? That it's not that there's anything brand new, it's just that with Michael's exposure to what he's now calling quantum still point, that it's even more in alignment with the work that he has done in the past and will continue to do with Patrick McGann.
Mm-hmm.
So Michael, for a lot of years now has talked about how the Lord's Prayer isn't a prayer, it's instructions about how to pray. And he goes through that whole thing about, if you asked me to teach you to sing,
Right.
and I just sang to you, that wouldn't be teaching you to sing.
Right.
Right. So the next thing that I'm having, difficulty making the connection with you is because you have this hip pain and you're considering an evaluation from an orthopedic surgeon about options for getting better use out of your hip at this stage in your life, right?
Yeah.
Being able to use your hip without all the pain, or being able to use it at all.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to tie that into the prayer work or the emotional energy thing, because at a certain level, well, yeah, there have been stories around, I've been reading them since my college days, of people who've had miracle healings. They are not the norm, right? They're the exception. And so is it likely that you're going to do something instead of a surgery that's going to produce significant results? I don't know. I don't have any expertise in that area. I can't comment. The best I can do for you in that regard is to say that when you make the decision, if you're not coming from a calm, centered space, you're probably not ready to make that decision yet.
Right.
Or
I agree with that.
you probably won't be as satisfied with the consequences of any decision you make if you don't dismantle your emotional upset before you make the decision.
Well, maybe I'm fooling myself. I don't think there's much emotional upset about all this. So Michael might say, well, that's why your hip hurts. You've put it in your hip. You're not aware of the upset. I'm imagining he might say that. Any physical problem doesn't seem nearly as disturbing as depression or anxiety. My son and I talk about that. You know, he might hurt his shin or something, and he'll tell me about it, but he'll add, this is just like nothing. This is just like a mechanical thing, like a doorknob that needs fixing. I don't have much feeling about it. I'm going to have it taken care of. And that's how I feel about this hip. I feel as if in my whole life, I'm, knock on wood, I feel as if I'm tempting the fates. I have never been happier or felt so happy with the work I'm doing, relationships I have, in spite of working on addiction. It's leading to revelation after revelation, and I don't know, I couldn't call them downloads exactly, but this is something mechanical. My son-in-law, who's a doctor, said, oh, go ahead and have it. You'll get 10 more years of good activity out of it. And my thought is, well, I've been reading about post-op hip replacement operations, and man, Tim and I would have to get a regular bed. We sleep on mattresses on the floor. We just put them in there, and Tim said, do you want to get a bed? And I said, well, I have to clean under a bed, so I'd rather have this on the floor so I don't have to clean under it. That's a silly reason not to get a bed. But now the doctor's saying, well, you can't get up off the floor after this kind of operation. You may never be able to again. And I'm thinking, well, the heck with that. I can get off the floor pretty well right now. Maybe. So anyway, Tim, thank you for entertaining my physical woes. I'm hoping there are other old, decrepit people on the station who are getting something out of this. But it is related to the relationship of the antenna. How much are we taking in of the good, peaceful, loving, human, truly human life, taking in or maintaining from inside, rather than letting something get all bollocksed up because we're holding on to something, a la John Sarno, holding rage in the spine or something. Anyway, no need to go any further with that if there's something doesn't pop right to mind.
Well, I recommend, as Michael would, all of the above kinds of things. Like I said, I don't have much expertise in that. I do know that when I have a physical problem, it may not be caused by my emotions, and yet my emotions will be affected.
Right.
So as I'm doing whatever I'm doing to help stay functional, I'm going to understand that it's in ways I can't figure it out in my conscious logical mind. life is going to work out better than I could have imagined. And my job is to watch how I'm using my conscious logical mind to create all kinds of upsets as I go down this ride of life that we talk about. Because I can't figure it out in a way that's going to make any good sense.
Well, I like what you said about it's going to be okay either way. I remember consulting the I Ching a gazillion years ago. A friend of mine, I wasn't using it, but a friend of mine suggested we confer with the I Ching about the need for a corneal transplant. And that was the answer. It'll be okay either way. Well, the outcome was that that particular transplant was a disaster, and I had to have it done again. And I was wondering where the I Ching fit into all that. And I thought it fit. It was just a wider girdle. It was saying everything's going to be okay. It was okay after 2 operations instead of 1, but it was okay. And it probably would have been okay if I hadn't done anything, although I'm not sure about that. Anyway, what you're saying is good.
I
Okay,
was
Dr. Tim.
I was able to get the Alan Watts stuff transcribed that I was working with, and was hitting a dead end where I couldn't get it to transcribe from YouTube.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because when I first started it, I wanted access to this Alan Watts talk that says 7 things people quit slowly when they move into
Yeah.
their spiritual life.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one that I sent it to several people, and more than one person said, "Oh, I've listened 3 or 4 times. It was perfect for me," etc.
Mm.
And so I have that I can go back to. But again, because I was tapping into his talks, I ended up with one of his books on Kindle, and it was, The Wisdom of Insecurity. And it's, written, I think we talked about this, written in 1951, and this is a book for a world, for an anxious world in 1951. Imagine we've had our share of anxieties going up and down since then.
Mm.
But it's the idea of learning to get more comfortable with uncertainty, right? So you say it's going to work out either way. Yeah, it's always working out. The issue is it doesn't always work out the way my 9-bit mind tells me it should work out. It works out as life would have it work out. It works out on its own terms, in its own way. So so it's the idea of the ancient wisdom that says, don't sweat the little things, and oh, by the way, they're all little things.
Mm-hmm.
Find a way to, as Abraham would have us, find a way to figure out how you're creating your emotion in every moment, because that's your most important creation in that moment. So it's not that life is going in the wrong direction and it needs me to correct it. It's that life is going in the right direction. It's life unfolding, and I could either learn from it or I can fight against it.
Mm-hmm.
But as the old song says, when I fight the law wins.
Mm.
So, thoughts?
Well, that sounds good. I just thought Michael has asked me if I would come on the his hour after this hour so that he and I can talk about the video he sent me. It's very good, and it's from many years ago. So I'm going to do that, but I wanted to have checked it out with you. How are you doing, Dr. Tim?
I'm doing all right. In what 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 metric would you like to use to compare how I'm doing?
I don't know.
In what way? How am I doing with what?
With your, like, you came on the radio show the other day and you said, I've had a pretty intense morning. And so,
Yeah, this morning has not been that way. It was that was the morning of saying goodbye to the person who I've known for 34 years, who was renting office space from us and passed away a few weeks ago, and his widow had come to pick up his belongings from our office space. And so, it was a half an hour of interacting with the widow of a former friend, and she was on the verge of tears the whole time and relaying the story of his death. And, you know,
life.
lots of life, lots of emotion, lots of, but I'm blessed in that I get to sit with people on a regular basis and help them understand what they might be doing to obscure from their own awareness how good their life is, what a gift life itself is. And even especially when it doesn't go the way their mind says it should.
I don't know whether this is worthy of telling on the radio show, but I have a friend from high school that I hardly knew in high school, but somehow on Zoom reunions, he's been the organizer of it, and I've been sort of like an MC. Because I teach on Zoom, people get kind of staring into the headlights on Zoom, and we came together for a reunion. I've told you about this before, and I said, hey, we're all just sitting here looking at each other. Let's start talking. So, Liz, where are you and what are you doing? And she started, and then we went from there, and it was perfectly easy. But he, as sort of the organizer of it, said, wow, you ought to come on and be MC each time. And I said, okay, it was fun. It was great. So he and I have become friends. And we were talking this morning, and he said, guess what? I have to have a hip replacement. I said, which hip? And he says, left. And I said, well, mine's the right. Let's do a three-legged race. We both have one good leg between us. And that was fun. And I've got two women friends at church who are limping around, postponing hip operations. And we've set up a plan. It's a joke. We're not going to do it. But we thought about how we should get a price reduction if we go in as the three of us and get hips fixed in adjacent beds in a dorm in the hospital or something. So there's a lot of fun connected with this new stage of decrepitude, as well as everything else. So that's just a teeny report.
Okay. Well,
you don't have to say anything.
I'm routinely advocating for people to watch life through a different lens. And it's kind of a manipulation from the lesson 3 in the way of mastery and lesson 1 in the way of mastery, where, they start out in lesson 1 and say, listen, we're going to introduce you to a system for doing this that has you relying on your awakened heart rather than your intellect to interface with life.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're going to suggest that you add to that your instructions from lesson 3, which are every perception you create is off the mark, and you can really know they're off the mark when they result in a negative emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you actively work to start identifying and canceling your judgments, the gifts life can bring to you will come to you in that way. They cannot come to you unless you quit your judging and you put aside your perceptions. In other words, move into the space where you actively release your attachments to your judgments when they go contrary to what the world is unfolding as. And be in the moment and ask life what it has to teach you. Be a perpetually avid student, which is another really good definition for a master. Become a perpetually avid student. Student of what? Of life. Asking life in each moment what it has to teach you. And then come back to the show soon and often and report your results. Because everybody I know that's ever done that has been thrilled with the results. Long term, not short term. Well, you know, he knows how to silence a room.
Well, I wanted to say I've been doing it and the results are right here. I think I understand. And I think the others of us on here are too, for all I know. And I hear these comments, people piping up. They're getting it. You're doing it.
And I love the language. Use your awakened heart to, and then
Interface.
interface. Yes,
To be the primary user interface with life rather than your intellect.
thank you. I was writing it down when you said I have a way of silencing the audience, because sometimes I have to stop and make sure that I write down certain words to trigger my files, my memories, my thoughts of how that integrates. And it's so beautiful. I look forward to this so much every day. And I also look forward to having some time at noon, my time, to move, to physically move. And so while I think Susan was sharing about the word decrepit, I think she said, and jokingly, I believe, from her tonality. And just as she said the word decrepit, I was riding my bicycle through this golden forest, and all these golden leaves were falling all around me, shimmering with like amazing light. And I thought, oh, I wish I could share this. I wish I could share this. So thank you for being here, everyone. And I will listen while I ride a little bit. And if I have something to say, I stop my bike and jump in. So thank you.
All right. Well, that brings fond memories. There were quite a few times I would be out on my bike listening to the hour of the internet show and being even a few times I participated from writing when I was in my recumbent writing phase. So enjoy the air, enjoy the weather, enjoy
Thank
the
you.
energy of the outdoors.
I will, and I'm sharing it.
Well, if there aren't any other comments or questions, I think I'll read from Alan Watts' 7 Things People Quit Slowly in this Spiritual Awakening. And this is available as a YouTube video, and I was finally able to get a transcript of it so I could share it. Alan writes, imagine a moment when you realize you can no longer pretend. The masks you've worn for decades suddenly feel suffocating. The games everyone is playing around you become painfully obvious. The life you built with such effort begins to feel like a prison made of other people's expectations. You are not depressed. You are waking up. And with this awakening comes a slow, inevitable shedding, a quitting of everything that is not truly you. Not in one dramatic leap, but gradually, piece by piece, until one day you look back and wonder how you ever lived any other way. Now, as I just read that last sentence, I have a wave of emotion coming over me because I just finished a session with a person who's actually stepping into that realization after about 7 of the most intensely difficult years of life that I've ever witnessed or been privileged to support somebody to go through. And she's at that point where she realizes I'm benefiting from these things in ways I never imagined. Alan goes on, he writes, awakening doesn't arrive like lightning to strike you and change you overnight. It steeps in like water through stone. Slowly, imperceptibly, it shapes you. You find yourself allergic to what once felt normal. Small talk, this small talk thing that people do, small talk tastes like dusts in your mouth. Ambitions that used to drive you, you now feel strangely hollow. Old identities hang off you like clothes that no longer fit. This is not something you decide. It happens to you. Your very being begins to react and reject falseness the way the body rejects poison. The question isn't whether you will quit these things. The question is how gently you allow the process to unfold. Now, he's referring to the process of quitting these things gently. I'm using my mind says the process of life to unfold. This unfolding of our life events is always happening. And if we choose to put ourselves in a position subordinate to it and ask it to teach us, we can learn. He goes on, the first thing you quit is the hunger for approval. You may not even notice it at first, but little by little, the desire to be seen, liked, validated, it begins to rot in your hands. Where you once bent yourself into shapes to please others, suddenly you can't. The words just won't come. The smile feels forced. Your body rebels. It is not rebellion out of anger. It is transformation from within. Like a tree whose roots finally reach deep water, you no longer depend on the rain of approval. And so, slowly, the performance falls away and something more authentic takes its place. What replaces this hunger is not arrogance. It's not indifference, but a quiet sense of worth that comes from simply being. You realize you don't need to earn the right to exist through applause or recognition. You exist, and that is enough. It feels as though a compass has been placed in your heart, one that points true regardless of who is watching. Approval becomes irrelevant because you begin to taste a deeper nourishment, an inner authority. And though it feels liberating, it can also feel lonely at first. For a while, you're caught between two worlds, no longer addicted to approval, and yet not quite at ease without it. And then something curious happens. You quit the need to be special. For much of life, being special seemed important, to stand out, to be unique, to be admired. And yet, with awakening, this craving begins to dissolve. You may notice yourself growing quieter about your own achievements, less eager to announce your discoveries. You stop weaving little performances to make yourself seem deeper, wiser, or more conscious. At first, this feels frightening. Wait a minute, if I'm not special, then who am I? But slowly you discover that when the need to be special dies, something extraordinary is born. You become authentically yourself without costumes. It's a paradox. The less you try to stand out, the more radiant you become. Flowers do not bloom to impress the passerby. They bloom because blooming is their nature. And when you quit performing specialness, your uniqueness shines more brightly than ever. You're no longer imprisoned by the exhausting effort of performing specialness, of appearing significant. You discover the quiet freedom of being ordinary. And in that ordinariness, life itself becomes extraordinary. You realize that to simply be is the greatest miracle of all. And so the weight of specialness, which was once so heavy, slips from your shoulders and disappears. Next comes a subtle but profound shift. You quit the performance of happiness. Not happiness itself, but the endless act of pretending to be happy, pretending to be positive, pretending to be above pain. You no longer have the energy to wear the mask of eternal sunshine. You stop forcing smiles when your heart is heavy. You stop reciting affirmations you don't believe. Awakening reveals that true spirituality is not about being endlessly cheerful. It is about being real. Real enough to feel joy when joy arises. Real enough to grieve when grief is present. Real enough to let life flow unmasked. At first, this may shock those around you. They were used to your performance. They counted on your mask. And yet, as you quit pretending, you discover something astonishing. Authenticity carries its own kind of light. It's not the blinding glare of forced positivity. It's a gentle glow of truth. And this truth, even when it includes sorrow, this truth is more healing, more inspiring than any false smile could ever be. To quit the performance of happiness is to reclaim your full humanity. It is to give yourself permission to live as the whole unfiltered being you were, and that you were always meant to be. Then, almost against your will, you begin to quit the need for certainty. Where once you clung to fixed beliefs, rigid identities, and tidy explanations, now you find yourself loosening your grip. Certainty, which once felt like safety, now feels like chains. You begin to sense that life is not meant to be pinned down. That truth is too alive to be captured in words. And that the capital T truth of life itself is too alive to be captured in words. At first, and this is key because a lot of us go through these waves and ripples as we try to awaken or we try to improve ourselves. At first, this feels terrifying. It feels like we don't know who we are. It feels like we don't know what will happen or why life unfolds as it does. And yet slowly you discover a peace that is deeper than certainty. You discover wonder. You discover mystery. To live without certainty is to live as a child again, with eyes wide open, astonished at the unfolding of each moment. You realize that not knowing is not a failure, but a doorway. You realize that freedom lies not in answers, but in presence. The mind protests. It wants to rebuild its walls of knowledge. And yet, each time you grip a certainty, it dissolves. Until one day, you stop grasping altogether. And there, in the vast openness of not knowing, you find yourself free. Life becomes a dance, not a puzzle to solve. And every step reveals life's own quiet perfection. As it unfolds, another thing happens and begins. Another thing begins to die. Slowly, you quit blaming others. You quit blaming the world. Even quit blaming yourself. Not because harm never happened, but because blame no longer serves you. You understand that holding on to blame is like drinking poison and hoping the other will fall. You begin to notice patterns. You notice how the same hurts repeat. The same roles play out. And instead of assigning guilt, you ask, what is life showing me here? Or what is this pain pointing toward? You realize that every wound carries a lesson and that blame blinds you to the gift. Now, letting go of blame is not easy. The ego resists. It wants to stay righteous. It wants to keep the story alive. However, awakening makes the story transparent. You see through it, and though you may still feel the sting of hurt, you stop clinging to it. And in that moment, an astonishing freedom emerges. No one holds power over you anymore. You become the author of your own life. You see others, even those who wounded you, not as enemies, but as mirrors. They reflect your shadow, your unhealed parts, your forgotten depths. In this way, every conflict becomes a teacher. And then comes one of the most subtle shifts of all. You quit using spirituality as an escape. You can no longer hide behind meditation to avoid your feelings, or behind grand words to avoid your wounds. Awakening pulls you down into your body, into your humanity. It demands that you stop bypassing your experience and instead live it fully. You find yourself allowing anger, sadness, desire, confusion, not as failures, but as essential colors in the painting of existence. You quit trying to float above life and instead plant your feet firmly in it. Spirit and flesh become one. This is not easy, for the temptation to escape remains. But the soul will not allow it anymore. When you try to run, your body rebels. When you try to bypass life, your body rebels. When you try to bypass life, it places you face to face with the very thing you wanted to avoid until you finally surrender. And in that surrender, you discover something luminous. Being human is not the obstacle to awakening, it is the doorway. To embrace your humanity is to embrace divinity. To feel your fear, your longing, your grief is to touch the living pulse of the universe. And this is what spirituality truly means. To touch the living pulse of the universe. Eventually, he writes, eventually you notice something else dissolving. The isolation of awakening. In the beginning, it may have felt like you were alone. You were separated from the world by your new awareness. Other people seemed asleep, distant, difficult to reach, and so you withdrew. However, slowly, awakening softens even this. You quit the idea that you're different, separate, superior. You realize that, in truth, you're deeply connected to everyone, not through sameness, but through shared humanity. You see yourself in the stranger, in the asleep, in the ordinary. And this recognition dissolves the loneliness. You discover community not in ideas, but in presence. To quit isolation is to open your heart again, not in naive merging, in conscious connection. You can sit with anyone, awake or asleep, and meet them as they are. You no longer need to prove yourself or protect yourself. You can simply be with them. This, perhaps, is the greatest fruit of awakening, the rediscovery of love. Not the love of romance or fantasy, but the love of presence, the love of shared being. You realize that when masks fall away, what remains between us is always love. And what love was and always has been, and that love was and has been what you sought all along. So what's happening here? He writes, piece by piece, you're quitting everything false. You quit the hunger for approval. You quit the need to be special. You quit the performance of happiness. You quit the clinging of certainty, clinging to certainty. You quit the poison of blame. You quit the escape of bypassing. And you quit the walls of isolation. Each falls away, not because you reject it, but because you no longer carry it. It's too heavy, it's too false, it's too small for who you are becoming. And in their place, something astonishing emerges. Inner worth, authentic uniqueness, genuine joy, peace with mystery, freedom from stories, full embodiment, and conscious connection. At first, this process feels like loss, like death after death, identity after identity crumbling away. However, look closer and you will see it not as a loss, but as liberation. Each quitting is a doorway into deeper truth. Each shedding reveals more of what you always were. You're not losing yourself. You are finding yourself. You're not dying. You're being born again and again in every moment. And what is false falls away. What is real remains. And what is real is simple, silent, present. It is you. You just as you are, without mask, without performance, without fear. The path of awakening is not about adding layers of wisdom, but peeling away everything that is not true. It is not about becoming someone better. It's about ceasing to be who you are not. Awakening is not an achievement. It is a homecoming, and like all homecomings, it happens slowly. You stumble, you hesitate, you return to old habits only to find they no longer satisfy. This is not failure. This is growth. Like waves on the shore, you move back and forth until finally the tide has turned and the old patterns are washed away. So if you feel yourself quitting approval, quitting specialness, quitting performances, quitting certainty, quitting blame, quitting escape, quitting isolation, trust the process. Do not force it. Do not resist it. Let it unfold as it must. Let life peel away what you no longer need. The quitting is not your doing. It is life moving through you, shaping you into who you truly are. And the more you gently surrender, the more gracefully it unfolds. Awakening is not a path you walk. It is a current that carries you. All you need to do is stop clinging. Look at your own life now. Can you see the signs? Can you feel the things you once held true beginning to lose their grip? The friends you can no longer maintain, the ambitions that no longer excite you, the masks that no longer fit? Do not fear these things. They are beginnings. Do not mourn what you are quitting. Celebrate what is being revealed. For beneath the false layers, beneath the performances, beneath the old stories, there awaits a self so luminous, so unshakable, so free that you once tasted it, that once you taste it, you'll never again trade it for approval or certainty. This then is the heart of awakening. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about no longer pretending to be someone else. The heart of awakening is about quitting everything that was never yours until only capital T truth remains. And truth does not need applause or performance or certainty. Truth does not blame or bypass or isolate. Truth simply is. And when you align with it, when you allow yourself to live from it, you find that life itself becomes lighter, simpler, more fluid. You stop fighting the current, stop fighting life, and you discover that the river of existence was carrying you all along. And so I say to you, do not resist the quitting. Let it happen. Let it peel everything away that is false, everything that is heavy, everything that is not truly you. Yes, it will be uncomfortable. And yes, it will be lonely at times. And yes, it will feel like death. However, on the other side of that death is life. Life more vivid, more free, more real than any life you've ever known. And when you quit what is false, what remains is love. And that love is not fragile. It is the foundation of the universe itself. It is what you are. You will discover that the self you thought you were, the actor, the seeker, the victim, the performer, all of that was only a mask. And beneath it, you were already whole, already free, already enough, just as you are. Awakening is simply the recognition of this truth. And once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Life will never again let you go and go back to sleep. So let yourself quit. Let yourself fall away from what is false. Do not be afraid of the emptiness it leaves, for emptiness is not nothingness. It is space. And in that space, the true self flowers slowly, quietly, beautifully. Awakening is not about becoming someone else. It's about remembering who you are when all else has fallen away. And when that memory returns, when you finally rest as yourself, you will realize something astonishing. You were never missing anything. You were never broken. You only forgot. And now you are remembering. And this, my friends, is freedom. And this, my friend, is freedom. That is from a talk that you can find on YouTube from Alan Watts about 7 things people quit as they become special.
You don't mean special, right?
Yeah. I was trying to look up the lyrics to a song that goes in line with this. I forget who it is, so I misspoke there at the end. But this idea that there's a river flowing and there are people clinging to the rocks at the bottom of the river, and they've got a whole community down there. But life is rather torturous because they're always worried of getting swept up in the current, and as the song lyrics play out, it's that God is the river. So let go, swimmer, and let go, get into the flow of life, get in. So it would have been perfect for this, the follow up here, but we're out of time, and I'll bring that to another episode of our little Mind Shifters Radio, since we're here at the end. So I hope you enjoyed listening to 7 things that people let go of as they awaken, as they realize what is false and let it go, and they step into the magnificence of life and what life can teach them, and how magnificent each of you are just because you have the breath of life in you. So I will remind us all that we come from love. We're made of the stuff that we call love. We actually are love, and everything else is false. And